Hi everyone, this is Josh Culp. We are learning Daf Shui. We are on Daf Kuf Chet of Masechet Bava Kamma, and I wanted to just speak for a moment about this concept that's going to come up in the next couple of pages about Gezel Hager, stealing something from a convert. I'm afraid that when we say stealing something from a convert and that you return it to the priests and not the convert himself, people are going to think, oh, the rabbis are condoning stealing from a convert. But this is a parshanut issue, an interpretation issue, and not a realistic issue. Right? The rabbis, when they are talking about this parsha, are talking about a hermeneutic problem, an interpretive problem in the text. So Numbers 5 talks about somebody who does some kind of wrong, which the rabbis interpret as stealing or robbing. And then he confesses what he does in verse Numbers 5:7. And that's when we've learned already he has to pay the principal, he has to pay the extra fifth, and he has to give it to the one who was wronged. Okay, and later on it talks about the ram of a sacrifice in verse 8. So then in verse 8, earlier in verse 8, the Torah says the following: V'im ein le'ish goel lahashiv ha'asham alav. If the person has no one to give the restitution back to, because the person has died and he has no heirs to give it to. Now, probably I imagine the original pshat is that if somebody dies without any close relatives, we're not going to look generations back to find other kinds of some kind of relatives, third cousins, fourth cousins, right? That just doesn't seem to be a practical thing. And so in that case, the Torah would say that the restitution goes to the priests because there's no one else to give it to, and we don't want the robber to keep the principal. However, the rabbis think, look, there's no way that any Israelite, anybody born as a Jew, doesn't have some goel, some redeemer, some relative somewhere. Rashi points out that you could go back to Yaakov for all of us, right? Anybody who's born as a Jew must have some kind of relatives. So the rabbis say, who is a Jew? I want to emphasize, a full Jew who has no relatives. That is only a convert who converts and then doesn't have any progeny, right? No offspring. Now, why? Because the rabbis considered a conversion to be like rebirth. So the convert loses his, technically, in a technical sense, loses his relationship with his former family. So in general, forgetting about robbing, if a convert dies and he doesn't have any relatives, there's a big issue there. His father, he doesn't have any progeny, his father, his brother, grandfather, uncle, etc., cannot inherit from him. Even his child born before he converted does not inherit from him, because again, conversion is like rebirth. So I'm not going to deal with general inheritance law. That's why the rabbis interpret this entire parsha over here, right? The entire, at least verse 8, where the restitution goes to the priests, the rabbis interpret that as referring to somebody who stole from a convert. I want to emphasize, rabbis talk about situations. This does not mean that they condone such situations. I think we sometimes are a little bit sensitive to these things, which is fine, but rabbis here are not condoning stealing from a convert. What they're talking about is if one steals from a convert and that convert has no heirs, to whom does he return it? And that's what they read in our parsha. Okay, I hope that clarifies the issue of stealing from a convert. I hope everyone is doing well, and I hope you will join us for our live Daf Shui class, which meets on Sundays.